Welcome back to the Artie Lang Show. Excited to have my first guest here. Director, writer, star, actor, does everything. Now he's doing a reality show about his comic book store. The comic book store now is called Jay and Silent Bob.
Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash.
Secret Stash. It's in Red Bank, New Jersey. The great Kevin Smith is here. What's up, Kev?
How are you, sir? Look at you multitasking. It's not just radio, but it's also TV as well.
Everything.
And I got to watch my language because it's also terrestrial as well.
The ridiculous thing about this setup is it's the best setup ever, but
it's sweet. Look around. It's art directed within an inch of its life. It looks phenomenal in here.
No, it's unreal.
For a radio show, you walk in, you're like, wow, somebody put some thought into what this looks like.
It is the single best TV studio I've ever been in my life. And DirecTV's got a lot of money, and they spent it, and I appreciate it. But the problem is during commercials, when we're just on DirecTV, you could curse like a sailor.
Right.
But when we're on radio, most of the show, because we're on like 28 regular radio stations around the country, you have to be FCC.
It's the old O&A conundrum.
Yeah.
Remember when they were splitting time between terrestrial and
you got to go
XM
from 100 miles an hour to like 30. It sucks. But
it's a skill set, man. If you're able to do it, people go, oh, that's cool. Like Bill Cosby back in the day, people would always be like, he never curses. And like for me, like that's all I got is cursing. So I always look at that dude. It's like he's pretty talented.
No, Bill Cosby is. Bill Cosby's not only does he not curse, he does 2 hours. And usually changes it up, like just sitting there. He does a
current,
2-hour.
Like you're still tuned in to current Cosby.
I just saw him 9 months ago do stand up, and he's older. He's got the eye thing going on.
What's the eye thing? Explain that.
I think he had a bit of a stroke, where he's got a lazy eye now, and it's very disconcerting.
Right.
I had like second row seat, so I could kind of really see it. But he sits there like he always did. But he did 2 hours, and I swear to you, I had heard 2 of the bits before. Everything else was new, just like riffing on stuff, like modern day stuff.
So funny, because I think of him as being frozen in time. Like, I think of him, and I think of, like, what would you ever record again after To Russell, My Brother, Who I Slept With? Like, that is a high point of comedy, but he never stopped. He just stopped putting out albums, maybe. Put out that book that was very popular when he was doing the show.
Right.
But I don't think of him as out there producing new material. It's so awesome to hear that.
He constantly writes, I guess. And I was talking to Chris Rock at the Comedy Store once. He had the same experience. He said, he goes, I saw him. He goes, yeah, I knew like one thing. Did like an hour and 45 minutes. And I guess it's just, it's what keeps him sane, I guess, I mean, which it keeps you.
Well, he's got like more money than God based on the TV show. So at this point, he's like, now I just do it for the love. It's not even a job at this point.
There's some guys, like there's levels of stand-up where, we all start out doing some lame open mic somewhere where it costs you money. And then there's maybe like 10 guys in history who have gotten to the level where, okay, here, like it's him, it's Seinfeld, Jay Leno, I guess. When
Dice had it at one point. Remember when Dice was like selling out the garden?
But he didn't sustain it. Like these other guys,
they've been able to keep it over a career.
Right, and they become such legends to where Seinfeld and Cosby, the deal is they have a private jet that they own. So they get like if it's a casino, sometimes they'll get like $400,000 for the show. And because casinos just want people in there, especially high rollers, spending money.
So that's the high end, like a Seinfeld, if he goes to play, it's going to be 400, and that's what, a 1 hour show?
You got to do at least an hour. Okay, $400,000 plus they pay for the jet fuel. And then you're in and out.
That's a huge chunk, man. You're talking like
50
maybe,
G's.
Something like that, depending on where he's coming from.
The jet fuel alone is like 10 times what an average comic would make at a casino. So you pay for the jet fuel, $400,000. You get him for the night. He doesn't need a room because he just flies in, does the show, flies right back out.
Now, when you get him for $400K, you're like, and before you leave, hand job. Because that's rather high. For that amount of money, it's not like clean my car. I'd be like, nobody's here. Just
I guarantee you, like stuff like pictures, I guarantee you, like taking a picture is all extra. I guarantee
really?
It's
so
not
even for that amount of money, if somebody gave me $400K, not only would I take pictures with him, but I'd be like, I'll come live with you as your butler for a year and help you clean up. Like,
and when you think about it, he's putting that, it's tip money compared to the Seinfeld money he's got. I mean, because he's got Seinfeld, every year he probably makes $80 million off of Seinfeld reruns.
From the residuals.
So, I mean, it's literally just one time Sam Simon, who was a good friend of mine,
he's the dude that did The Simpsons.
Co-created The Simpsons. He got a little drunk one night, and he said this before on the radio, so he's not going to care. But he said that this was about 7 years ago. We were in L.A. hanging out, and he told me that every quarter, Now, he hasn't worked on The Simpsons since the 5th season, so
Right.
20 years. Every quarter, he gets a $20 million check still because he gets merchandise and the
the
residuals.
sweetest plum.
And every single time they re-up it for
Right.
another 5 years, he gets paid.
Think about that. He did his job years ago.
And did it well. I mean, the show was
did a
great.
fantastic
Yeah.
job, and then a bunch of people were like, "We got this, goodbye." and for that, in exchange, they're like, "Here's your massive check every
Everything.
year."
I mean, so everything he does from there on in is just like paying taxes. So stand-up money for Seinfeld is just forget it. It's not-
Leno, they'd said that about too. That famously, he's like, he didn't touch his Tonight Show money.
Which
He
is like-
lived off of his touring money.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But Leno did the smart thing where, well, Seinfeld did it too, where he never did a special. So he could always tour with the same, he's toured with the same hour and a half essentially for 25 years. And Seinfeld, when he got done, he wrote a new act right after he got done with the Seinfeld show. He did a Broadway special called "I'm Telling You for the Last Time." It was all his material he did for 20 years.
I remember that with the horse bit about like how many horses? That's a lot.
He was doing that for 20 years.
That was his whole. Yeah,
and he
they
never
just
let
put him to
anybody
bed.
see it, so he could keep doing it. And then I guess he finally.
Is that the secret of the road? See, that's why, like, I do a lot of comedy clubs, but
Well,
I'll never
do
be a
the
comic because I don't do a set. Like,
Right, you do a lecture though, kind of like
I used to back in the day. I used to stand
You
up
used to
to
do
the
colleges.
Q&A,
Right,
a lot.
yeah.
And then when I came and it was back in when we were shooting Cop Out. I got to play Carnegie Hall,
Wow,
and I
yeah.
sold out Carnegie Hall, and that changed everything. Suddenly, I was off campuses and in theaters and in the city and whatnot. So I was doing Q&A, just standing there and essentially storytelling, all allegorical and whatnot, off of somebody's question in the audience. And then about 2-3 years ago, maybe it's coming up on 4 years ago now, I started taking the podcasts out. Like, we were the first ones that were like, let's take this conversation and do it in front of people.
Right.
So when you do that, it's a different show every night. Like, I started doing a lot of our shows. I do one of our shows, the podcast called Hollywood Babylon, I do with my friend Ralph Garman. We started doing it up at Lovitz's club, at the John Lovitz Comedy Club up at Universal City Walk. And when I first got there, he was having me explain the concept of like the podcast. I'm like, what do you mean, dude? It's conversation and it's recorded and stuff. And he was very dialed into his act. Like he was like, he was like, I can't do my act publicly.
He's very insecure about stand-up because I saw him start out. He came out with me and Norm Macdonald. I was opening for Norm and Lovitz with Middle sometimes, and this was probably about 15 years ago. And he was just trying to do it for the money,
right?
And he's real insecure about it. You know, he's not loose at all about it.
No, yeah,
it's kind of funny, but
it's kind of I guess it's a bit of a thing with him to some degree. But he's got this kind of he just couldn't get his head around the notion of recording it and giving it away. He's like, you just give out what you've said, all that funny stuff. And I was like, yeah, what are we gonna do with it? It's like it changes every week.
That's old school comic mentality.
To protect the act and not let it get out. Like that I found very
money.
strange.
It's as if it's a bag of money to you when someone's trying to take it from you.
But to him, I was like, dude, you have the ability to just sit down in front of a microphone and tell a story about the time that Steve Martin hosted of the many times you were there.
Yeah.
Or, a fight that you saw, or this musical act. Like, you don't even have to do your routine anymore, dude. You don't have to tell your jokes. Like, just hold court and talk about your life and doing as entertainingly as you can. And that could be your act. And he couldn't get his head around that. He was like, no, why would anyone come see me? And I'm like, because it's going to be different every time because you're actually talking about
and
stuff
it's interesting. You're talking about show business. Everyone's interested in show business.
Of course.
If you get a guy like a Richard Pryor, who was a master storyteller, and you take a guy and expose him to the life he had, then you get that classic special where he told about shooting up a car with his ex-wife and dealing with being famous. The way the Beatles told it in songs, dealing with being famous.
Right.
You're a guy, I always gave you props for that because you saw show business at its weirdest and nuttiest of forms because you had such success early on, and you were able to tell stories like that on stage, and you're good at it. And of course, people love it. Everybody loves stories about show business.
Candor, dude. That's what everyone loves. It's whether it's about show business or sports or marriage or
being honest about
being a
something.
priest, as long as you're candid, because people are fed so much hype and lies and BS that if you can stand out there and be like, yeah, my wiener's small, Bruce Willis hates me, and my last movie didn't go well, they'll believe the next 10 things you say. They're like, well, this guy's pretty honest.
Right, the Bruce Willis story is great. I saw you tell that really.
But it's candor. That's what I think people crave. Like I've been doing the podcasting thing for the last 5 years, coming up on 6 years.
Right.
Hardcore. And I do about 4 or 5 shows a week. And I just want to know, like, what is it that dials people in? Why do people come back aside from free? Because they can listen to the radio, they can go watch a movie.
Sure,
they don't have to waste their time.
There's a million options.
There's so many options. What is it? And it's candor. People just like when you're honest with them, because so many people aren't. That's why talk radio kind of really works, because they hear truth in it.
That's what we got to take a break. I'm sorry, real quick, but when we come back,
Look at you. You were like,
he's a huge
silent bottle. Suddenly he got cut off.
He's a huge fan of yours. So we'll get into this. You can hang out for a couple of seconds.
Yeah,
but that's the point. Howard would say to me on the air, he goes, just be genuine. You got to be genuine on the radio, because people can tell if you're not.
Yeah.